Ayawadamila Demi wiped the sweat off her forehead as she balanced a tray of roasted plantains in the market. Life had always been tough, but she refused to be defeated by her circumstances. While others saw poverty, she saw an opportunity to rise. But how? She had the knowledge. Digital finance, forex trading and investment strategies, but no capital to turn her dreams into reality. Then came Al-Haji Ibrahim Al-Ayemi, a man whose name alone commanded respect. With his tailored agbada and a convoy of luxurious cars, he was everything Dami had never known: powerful, wealthy, and influential. Their worlds should never have collided, yet fate had a different plan. When Ibrahim first saw Dami, he was mesmerized. She wasn't just beautiful. There was a fire in her eyes, an intelligence that set her apart. He watched as she skillfully negotiated with customers, her voice confident, her presence commanding. "Who is she?" Ibrahim whispered to his friend, Chief Emeka. "A poor girl with big dreams," Emeka scoffed. "She's not your type, Al-Haji." But Ibrahim wasn't one to listen to advice. Despite their different worlds, Ibrahim pursued Dami with an intensity she never expected. He sent gifts, showered her with attention, and most importantly, listened to her ideas. For the first time, someone powerful saw her worth. "You're intelligent, Dami. With the right resources, you can build an empire," he told her one evening as they sat by the lagoon, the city lights reflecting in the water. Dami hesitated. Was he serious, or was this just another game played by rich men? "I don't need a man to build my dreams," she challenged. Ibrahim smiled. "Maybe. But with me, you won't have to fight alone." Love blossomed, and soon wedding bells followed. Dami, once a market girl, became the wife of a billionaire. But was this the beginning of a fairy tale or a tragedy in disguise? Marriage to Ibrahim was like stepping into another world. Dami no longer worried about food or money. She had unlimited access to wealth. But instead of sitting idle, she built her empire. She launched businesses, expanded into forex trading, and within a short time, her name became just as powerful as Ibrahim's. Her success wasn't just about money, it was about power, influence, and respect. The people whispered, "See how she transformed herself. From a market girl to a business mogul. She's smarter than her husband. Maybe she was the real genius all along." First, Ibrahim was proud. But pride has a way of turning into insecurity. As Dami's wealth grew, Ibrahim's influence shrank. Business partners no longer rushed to his office. They now sought his wife's expertise. Invitations to elite events bore her name first. His identity as the Al-Haji Ibrahim Al-Ayemi was fading. Then came Chief Emeka's words, dripping with poison. "A man letting his wife surpass him. It's a taboo. Do whatever you must to bring her down before she takes your place." Ibrahim scoffed, but that seed of doubt had been planted. Had he created his own downfall? Was his wife unknowingly stripping him of his power? That night, Ibrahim watched as Dami worked on her laptop, her fingers flying across the keyboard, her face glowing with purpose. She was unstoppable. A dark thought whispered in his mind. What if she lost everything? Would she still be powerful? Could he let this continue? Could he be the man who allowed his wife to rise above him? Well, he needed to act. But how far would he go? Ibrahim sat in his private lounge, surrounded by his closest friends. The air was thick with cigar smoke and the sound of laughter, but his mind was far from at ease. Chief Emeka leaned in, his voice low yet sharp. "You are losing yourself, Al-Haji. Your wife walks with the power you once had. People respect her more than you. Is that what you want?" Ibrahim clenched his jaw. "Dami is my wife. Her success is my success." Emeka scoffed. "Success? No, my friend. This is disgrace. A woman cannot outshine her husband and expect peace in his home. If you don't act now, soon she will own everything, including you." Ibrahim sipped his whiskey, his thoughts growing darker. Could Emeka be right? Was he becoming a mere shadow in his own home? That night, as Dami worked late into the night, Ibrahim sat on their balcony, staring at the city lights. His thoughts spiraled into a dangerous plan. She has risen because of my wealth. If I take it away, what will she be? The next morning, Ibrahim's plan was set in motion. Dami, I've made a few business investments, but they require urgent funds. I need you to transfer a portion of your savings to support them, he said over breakfast. His voice was calm, calculated. Dami looked up, surprised. How much are we talking about? A few 100 million naira, just for now. She hesitated. She trusted her husband, but something in her gut warned her. Yet, she reasoned, wasn't he the one who gave her the resources to build herself? Reluctantly, she agreed. One transaction turned into 2, then 3. Within weeks, Dami's accounts had been drained to almost nothing. Dami sat in her office, reviewing her statements. Her savings were nearly wiped out. Ibrahim had assured her it was temporary, but no refunds had been made. Confused, she confronted him that night. Ibrahim, where is the money I transferred? You said it was an investment. What's happening? He didn't even flinch. The business didn't go as planned. We lost everything. Her heart pounded. Everything. How is that possible? That's how business works, my love, he said nonchalantly, sipping his wine. Dami felt her stomach twist. Was this just misfortune, or had her husband deliberately set her up? Days later, Ibrahim took his wickedness a step further. One evening, he handed her a glass of juice with a smile. You've been so stressed lately. Drink this, it'll help you relax. Dami trusted him. Why wouldn't she? She drank the juice, and within minutes, the world around her blurred. Her limbs felt heavy. She struggled to stay awake, but the drowsiness consumed her. For 3 days, she lay unconscious in the hospital. When she finally woke up, she found Ibrahim sitting beside her. His face twisted with false concern. Dami, the doctors say you've been overworking yourself. They insist you take a long break from work. Her heart raced. That's ridiculous. I was fine before I collapsed. The doctor entered, holding a medical report. Madam, your body is suffering from extreme stress. If you continue working, it could be fatal. You must stay home and rest. Dami stared at the doctor, then at Ibrahim. The look in her husband's eyes sent chills through her spine. This was not an accident. This was a trap. With no choice, Dami was forced to step away from her businesses. Investors pulled out, projects crumbled, and her name slowly faded from the financial world. She sat by the window of their mansion, her hands gripping the armrest tightly. He thinks he has won. He thinks he has stripped me of my power. But has he forgotten who I am? Her children noticed the shift. Adebayo, her eldest son, clenched his fists. Why is Daddy doing this to you, Mama? Moreo whispered. Why can't we stop him? Dami exhaled, forcing a smile. Because sometimes, my children, the best revenge is patience. Ibrahim believed he had broken her. But what happens when you push a woman of intelligence, resilience, and strength into a corner? You create a force more dangerous than you can ever imagine. Dami sat on the edge of her bed, staring at the morning sun filtering through the curtains. The walls of the mansion felt like a prison, her once thriving businesses now slipping through her fingers. Ibrahim's plan had worked. She was financially crippled, her influence weakened. But was she defeated? No, she whispered. A man may take everything from a woman, but he cannot take her mind. Her children had seen the fall of their mother, but would they also see her rise? Would she allow her husband to rewrite the story of her life? She took a deep breath. It was time to fight back. The children had grown distant from their father. The once loving home now carried a tension so thick, it suffocated them. One evening, Adebayo sat beside his mother. His face filled with frustration. Mama, we see everything. Daddy thinks we don't know, but we do. We know what he did to you. Tears pricked Dami's eyes. She had been silent for too long, but not anymore. Adebayo, Moreo, my children. I want you to watch closely. Your mother is not a weak woman. I will show you what it means to rise from the ashes. She had lost money, but she had not lost her mind. She had knowledge, and knowledge was the greatest wealth of all. That night, after everyone had gone to bed, Dami took out her old laptop, the one she had bought with the last of her savings. Dust had settled on it, but that didn't matter. She powered it on, her fingers itching to begin. Forex trading was how I started before. It will be how I rebuild. For hours she studied the markets, analyzed patterns, and made careful predictions. The fire that once burned in her had not died. It had only been resting. By morning, she had made her first successful trade. By the end of the week, she had doubled her investment. And by the end of the month, Dami Adeyemi was richer than she had ever been. But this time she wasn't just rich, she was smarter. Ibrahim had no idea. He continued living recklessly, gambling away his fortune, drowning in arrogance. He believed Dami was still trapped, still powerless. He would pass by her in the mansion, barely acknowledging her presence. "Are you still enjoying your rest, my dear wife?" he would mock, believing she had become irrelevant. Dami would only smile. "Very much, Ibrahim. Thank you for the opportunity." Would he ever suspect that under his own roof, the woman he had tried to destroy was silently rebuilding herself? Could he imagine that the wife he had caged was now richer than she had ever been before? Well, and that was her greatest weapon. While Dami was silently rising, Ibrahim was slowly falling. His gambling addiction had spiraled out of control. Money was slipping through his fingers like sand, but he refused to stop. One evening, Chief Emeka came to visit. His expression was serious. "Alhaji, your debts are piling up. People are talking. You are losing everything." Ibrahim scoffed. "You worry too much, Emeka. I am a billionaire. Money comes, money goes." "Not when you are losing faster than you are gaining," Emeka countered. For the first time, fear flickered in Ibrahim's eyes. He had spent years building his empire, but now it was crumbling beneath him. And the most ironic part, the woman he tried to destroy was the one who held the power to save him. But would she? Would Dami be merciful to a man who had tried to break her? Or was this the moment she let him drown in his own greed? Ibrahim sat in his study, staring at the empty glass in his hand. The walls of his empire were cracking, and for the first time in his life, he felt powerless. "How did this happen?" he muttered to himself. His wealth had once seemed endless, yet now his accounts were bleeding dry. The debt collectors were circling like vultures. His wife, his once obedient wife, she had warned him. "Ibrahim, your reckless spending will ruin you." But had he listened? Well, he had laughed at her, mocked her, thought her warnings were nothing but the nagging of a woman who didn't understand power. But now, the great Ibrahim Adeyemi was on the verge of ruin, and the very woman he sought to destroy was flourishing. Ibrahim needed a plan, quickly. His so-called friends were nowhere to be found. The same men who had urged him to crush Dami were now silent, avoiding his calls. But one friend, Akin, finally answered. "I warned you, Ibrahim," Akin sighed over the phone. "You let a woman outsmart you. She is probably richer than you now." The words stung like fire. Ibrahim gritted his teeth. "That is impossible. Dami is home. She has nothing." Akin chuckled. "Are you sure? A woman like Dami? Do you think she just sat back and let you win?" Ibrahim's heart pounded. Could it be? Could she have found a way to regain her wealth without him knowing? He needed proof. He needed control before it was too late. That night, Ibrahim did something he never thought he would do. He spied on his wife. While Dami and the children were asleep, he crept into her home office. His fingers trembled as he opened her laptop. What he saw made his blood run cold. Account after account, trade after trade. Dami had not only regained her fortune, but she had surpassed him. She was making millions effortlessly. "No, no. This cannot be," he whispered, gripping the table. His vision blurred with rage and disbelief. The woman he had tried to silence had outplayed him in every way. What was left of his pride? What was left of him? The next morning, Ibrahim sat across from Dami at the breakfast table. She was calm, elegant, the very picture of grace. "You look troubled, my husband," she said softly, sipping her tea. He forced a smile. "Just business." "Business? Or consequences?" she asked, meeting his eyes. His fingers tightened around his spoon. She knew. She knew he had seen her accounts. But he could not let her win. A man like him could not lose to his own wife. That day, Ibrahim did the unthinkable. He called his last remaining connection in the financial world, an old friend with a dangerous reputation. "I need a favor," he said. "My wife has millions stashed away. I need to drain it without her knowing." The man on the other end chuckled darkly. "You are playing a dangerous game, Ibrahim. Just tell me how to do it." Later that night, Dami received an email. "Suspicious activity detected on your account." Her heart pounded. She logged in immediately, and what she saw sent a wave of cold fear through her. Thousands of dollars, gone. Was this a mistake? A system error? Then realization struck. Ibrahim. Her hands shook with rage. He had tried to steal from her. He had not learned his lesson. Dami closed her eyes, took a deep breath. Would she let this slide? Would she continue forgiving the man who had done everything to ruin her? Or was this the final betrayal? Was it time to end this once and for all? Dami sat in her office, staring at her laptop screen. The numbers didn't lie. Her account had been tampered with. Thousands gone overnight. And there was only one person who could have done this. "Ibrahim," she whispered, her hands tightening into fists. How could he? After everything he had done to break her, after poisoning her, after trying to make her jobless, after turning their own children against him. He still had the audacity to steal from her? Dami's heart pounded. Was this the man she had once loved? The father of her children? No, this was someone else. Someone corrupted by greed and ego. "You will not take from me again, Ibrahim." But how far was she willing to go to protect herself? Would she let him crumble, or would she strike back? That evening, Ibrahim returned home, acting as if nothing had happened. Dami waited for him at the dining table. Her arms folded across her chest. "We need to talk." He sighed dramatically. "About what now, Dami?" She slid a printed copy of her bank statement across the table. The missing money was highlighted in red. "You tell me," she said coldly. Ibrahim's eyes flickered with something. Guilt? Fear. But he quickly masked it with a smirk. "Maybe you made a mistake in your trading. It happens." Dami's jaw clenched. "You think I don't know how to check my own accounts?" He laughed, leaning back in his chair. "You're imagining things, my dear. Maybe it's stress. You should rest." Rest. After he tried to rob her. "Ibrahim, don't insult my intelligence," she snapped, standing up. "I know what you did." Silence. For the first time, she saw a flicker of panic in his eyes. He opened his mouth to speak, but she cut him off. "I will give you one chance to return my money. If you don't." "If I don't what?" he interrupted, rising to his feet. "What will you do, Dami? Call the police? Embarrass me?" A slow, dangerous smile spread across her lips. "No, Ibrahim. I don't need to do anything. You are already destroying yourself." Ibrahim left the house that night, furious. He had expected Dami to scream, to beg, to crumble under the weight of his betrayal. Instead, she had stood tall, unshaken. "She thinks she's untouchable," he muttered, driving aimlessly through the city. His phone rang. It was one of his last remaining business associates. "Ibrahim, we need to talk." "Not now, I have." "No, you listen to me. The board is voting tomorrow to remove you as CEO. There are fraud allegations against you, and the government is investigating. If you don't act fast, you will lose everything." His hands clenched around the steering wheel. "Who started this?" he demanded. "Your wife is not the problem, Ibrahim. You are. You've gambled away your reputation. And now it's catching up to you. The call ended. Ibrahim slammed his fist against the dashboard. Oh, this is not happening. I am Ibrahim Adeyemi. I will not lose. But wasn't that what he had been doing all along? Losing. The next morning, Ibrahim woke up to a nightmare. His bank accounts frozen. His investments gone. His company shares seized. Panic gripped his chest. He rushed to make calls, but no one answered. His business partners, his so-called friends, all of them had abandoned him. This is Dami's doing, he whispered, rage bubbling inside him. She turned them against me. But deep down he knew the truth. This wasn't Dami's doing. This was his own arrogance coming back to haunt him. And then, the final blow. Government officials arrived at his mansion. Mr. Ibrahim Adeyemi, you are under arrest for financial misconduct and misuse of company funds. His world collapsed. Dami stood at the doorway, watching in silence as the officers placed handcuffs around his wrists. For the first time, there was no anger in her eyes, only disappointment. Inside the cold prison cell, Ibrahim sat alone, his head buried in his hands. His wealth was gone, his reputation ruined. The power he had clung to so desperately had vanished overnight. And the only person who could save him, the same woman he had betrayed. A guard approached his cell. You have a visitor. Ibrahim looked up, and there she was, Dami. She stepped forward, her eyes unreadable. You did all this to me, she said softly. You tried to destroy me, poison me, make me jobless. And yet look where we are. Tears burned in his eyes. Dami, please. I was a fool. I let my greed and pride destroy me. But you are the only person who can help me now. She tilted her head, considering his words. Would she forgive him? Or would she let him suffer the consequences of his own making? Dami sat across from Ibrahim, separated by cold iron bars. His once proud face was hollow, his shoulders slumped. He had been powerful once, untouchable. Now he was just a man stripped of everything. His wealth, his status, even his dignity. Dami, please, his voice cracked. I know I don't deserve your help, but I have no one else. The world has abandoned me. She exhaled slowly. Ibrahim, you didn't just lose your wealth. You lost your soul in your greed. You tried to break me. You wanted me powerless so you could remain on top. Do you have any idea what that felt like? Silence. And yet, here I am. I could walk away, leave you to rot in this cell. Let you feel what it means to be powerless. Wouldn't that be justice? Ibrahim swallowed hard. His hands gripped the metal bars, desperation oozing from him. I was blinded by my pride, Dami. But I see now. I swear if you help me, I will never make that mistake again. Her gaze was unreadable. Do you truly regret what you've done, or do you just regret getting caught? The question hung in the air, suffocating him. Dami left the prison without giving him an answer. She spent the night awake, staring at the ceiling. Do I save the man who destroyed me? Do I let him suffer the consequences of his own actions? What does he truly deserve? Her children had already made their decision. Mama, don't do it. He ruined you, said Ada, her eldest daughter. He tried to take everything from you. Why should you give him another chance? Her son, Tund, asked. But Dami wasn't like Ibrahim. She couldn't let bitterness consume her the way it had consumed him. If I help him, I do it for myself, not for him. I do it so that my conscience remains clean. I do it because, even after everything, I refuse to let hatred define me. And so, she did what no one expected. She used her own savings to pay Ibrahim's debts, secured his release, and hired the best lawyers to clean up his mess. The world was shocked. Why would she help him? After everything. But Dami had made her choice. And Ibrahim. He was about to learn that redemption is never given. It must be earned. Ibrahim stepped out of the prison gates, free but not victorious. His empire was gone. His wealth had vanished. He had no home, no influence, no power. For the first time in his life, he was truly a nobody. Dami stood waiting for him. Your freedom is not a gift, Ibrahim. It is a second chance. Do not waste it. He nodded, shame in his eyes. I will prove to you that I can change. Don't prove it to me, she said. Prove it to yourself. Would he finally become the man he should have been? Or would history repeat itself? Only time would tell. Ibrahim returned home, but nothing felt like home anymore. His mansion sold. His luxury cars. His bank accounts. And worst of all, his children wanted nothing to do with him. You are not my father, Tun spat. You are a stranger who ruined our family. Ada didn't even look at him. Mama saved you, but you don't deserve her kindness. Their words cut deeper than any knife. Was this what he had become? A man without a family, without love, without respect. Weeks passed, and Ibrahim tried to build himself up again. He applied for jobs, but no company wanted to hire a disgraced CEO. He reached out to his old business partners, but they had already replaced him. Ibrahim, you are a relic of the past. No one trusts you anymore. For the first time, he understood the true weight of his mistakes. Would he let his pride crush him? Or would he fight for a second chance? Then, something happened that he never expected. Dami offered him a job. You once tried to take everything from me, she said. But I am giving you a chance to rebuild. Work for me. His pride screamed no. But his heart, it whispered, if you reject this, you have nothing left. Ibrahim stood outside Dami's office, his hands trembling. Would he step inside and start anew? Or would he let his ego destroy him once again? He took a deep breath and pushed the door open. The final battle wasn't against the world anymore. It was against himself. Ibrahim sat in his office, but it was not his office. It was Dami's. He was no longer the CEO, no longer the powerful billionaire everyone bowed to. He was an employee. I never thought I'd be working under my own wife, he muttered, staring at the blank computer screen. Dami had given him a role in the financial department, a place where he had zero power, zero authority. The irony was cruel. The man who once made decisions that shaped industries was now struggling to understand a simple trading spreadsheet. Ibrahim, do you want to work or complain? Dami's voice snapped him out of his thoughts. She stood by the door, her arms crossed. The same woman he had tried to break was now the one trying to fix him. His pride flared. I don't need your pity, Dami. Her expression was unreadable. Then prove it. Learn. Adapt. Be better than the man you were before. Could he? Could he truly erase the selfish, power-hungry man he had been and become something more? Or was he simply a man who had lost everything and was pretending to change? Ibrahim tried. For the first time he listened. He studied. He watched how Dami made calculated financial decisions, how she read the market like a book, how she turned a single trade into millions. And yet something gnawed at him. His old friends, the same men who had once cheered him on in gambling halls, the same ones who whispered poison into his ears, began to call him. Ibrahim, you're really working under your wife. What happened to the lion in you? The Ibrahim we knew would never bow to a woman. Those words stung. Were they right? Had he become a shadow of himself? That night he stood by the mirror, staring at his reflection. Who am I now? A man trying to rebuild? Or a man pretending to change just to survive? One evening a familiar number called. His old gambling friend, Kunal. Ibrahim, I have an offer for you. A chance to get your power back. Ibrahim's breath hitched. I'm done with all that. Kunal chuckled. Are you? Because I heard your wife still holds all the power. Doesn't that bother you? Did. More than he cared to admit. Kunal continued. I have an inside tip. High-stakes deal. One trade and you're rich again. You can be the Ibrahim everyone respects. You can take back your name. Ibrahim hesitated. One deal. One win. And I rise again. But had he really learned? Or was he about to repeat his greatest mistake? Ibrahim sat before his computer, his heart pounding. The trade was in front of him. One click and he could make millions or lose everything. Ibrahim, what are you doing? Dami's voice. He stiffened. Are you really about to throw away everything again? He clenched his fists. Dami, I need this. She stepped closer. What you need is to prove you've changed. Silence. Or are you still the same man who gambled away his own family's future? His fingers hovered over the keyboard. He could already hear the voices in his head. Ibrahim the billionaire is back. The legend has returned. But then, his children's voices echoed louder. You ruined us, father. You wanted mama to fail, but she rose. Will you rise the right way or fall again? His breath trembled. Ibrahim, if you place that trade, you're not just betting money, you're betting your soul. Dami was right. With a shaking hand he closed the trade. Kunnal's voice rang in his ear. You're a coward, Ibrahim. But for the first time in his life he didn't care. That night, Ibrahim walked into the living room where his children sat. I need to say something, he began, his voice raw. His children looked at him, skeptical. I was a fool. I let my pride blind me. I wanted power more than I wanted my own family. And I nearly lost everything. His voice cracked. I don't deserve your forgiveness. But I want to be a father again. If you'll let me. Silence. Then Ada stood. She walked to him, staring him in the eyes. Prove it, Baba. A single tear slid down his cheek. For the first time in years he felt hope. Would he finally become the man they deserved? Or would history repeat itself once more? Ibrahim stood before his children, their gazes piercing into his soul. Prove it, Baba, Ada had said. But how? How does a man rebuild what he spent years destroying? Dami entered the room, her face unreadable. You say you've changed, Ibrahim. But change isn't words. It's action. Ibrahim swallowed. I will prove it. I will earn back everything I lost. The air was heavy. Would they believe him? Or was it too late? The next morning, Dami placed a file in front of Ibrahim. If you truly want redemption, then help me build a future for our children. Ibrahim opened the file. Business plan. Clean, legitimate investment strategy. No gambling. No shortcuts. Just real honest work. You want me to run this? He asked hesitantly. Dami nodded. Side by side with me. But if you fail this time, Ibrahim, I won't save you again. This was it. The moment of truth. Would he embrace change? Or fall into his old ways? Weeks passed. Ibrahim worked, truly worked. He studied market trends, learned from Dami, listened instead of dictated. He rebuilt his children's trust step by step. One evening his son, Tund, approached him. Baba, do you know what I realized? Ibrahim raised a brow. What? Tund smiled. For the first time in my life, you're not just our father. You're becoming a man we can respect. Tears stung Ibrahim's eyes. This was true wealth. Not money. Not power. But family. And this time he wouldn't lose it.